So there's a couple Tod talks there. Like I said, we've done a bunch more. We plan to keep doing them every Wednesday. If anybody has any questions about anything, I think that Al and Randall have a little bit of time. Is that right, Al?
Correct. We have some time. Can answer got questions. And to get it started, Tod, I have a question for you. What is the American Sign Museum's criteria for bringing a sign into the collection?
That's a treatise, but I'll try to answer it quickly. Some of it, the goal of the museum is to get as many types of signs from as many parts of the country, from as many different time periods, using as many different materials from as many different sign companies as possible. So even though we're highlighting neon here today, we have gold leaf on glass, we have show cards. So we're trying to represent the full gamut of American signage. So that would be my quickest answer. I am kind of partial to some of the funkier signs. When we were talking about the Tod talks on Fergie, you couldn't help but notice the Sputnik sign that was rotating below it to the right. I really like those types of signs, but I'm equally enamored of some of the early light bulb signs, which were the period before neon. So that's a pretty quick answer there, but it's a good question, Al. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And now we have a question from the audience. Audience member would like to know what your perspective is on painting or not painting a sign, an older sign that comes into the collection. How do you feel about patina versus scraping it off and repainting the cabinet?
Our general policy is when in doubt, don't. We don't like to do anything to the sign but clean it. I would say the one exception is that we will restore the neon on a sign, but we don't like to repaint the signs. The majority of the signs are inside a building. So we've kind of captured the sign, how it was when we acquired it. Some of that patina is part of the story of that sign. And if you include bullet holes in patina, I guess that's kind of patina. We actually have a sign from Compton, California for Earl Scheib, where we actually had, that was one of the few exceptions to our policy because we had to recreate portions of that sign, but we left the bullet hole, the entry and exit, because obviously that's kind of an interesting part of that sign, especially coming from Compton.
It adds character to the sign.
Adds character.
All right.
Time for the next people.
Okay, Tod, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Great presentation. And we look forward to seeing you during the next 5 days of Neon Speaks. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan Randall.
Okay. All right, our next presenters are Dydia Delyser and Paul Greenstein. Now, is it possible that, once again, everything we know is wrong? It is possible. Well, in regards to the history of neon, this may well be the case. Dydia and Paul have penned a brief but concise history of the neon sign beginning at the beginning and covering scandals, murder, fascist, and forgotten inventors. It's a full-color, lavishly illustrated electrical bodice ripper. Aficionados of neon will find this an indispensable Bible to the history of their favorite collision of art and commerce. So Paul and Dydia, shall we proceed?
Are when ready.
Thanks, Al, for that terrific introduction. Let me share my screen. One sec.
In there somewhere.
All right, you should all be looking at the title slide. Can someone confirm that?
I think nobody can hear you.
Confirmed.
Oh,
Thank
confirmed.
you.
Okay.
Great. So I'm Dydia, and that's Paul. We just have a really short time to talk with you about something we all care really a great deal about. So in order to keep carefully to that time, I'm going to offer a brief prepared presentation. Then afterwards, we'll have plenty of time for questions about the book, discussion about neon. All of that leaves me the straight man on the duo to do the talking for now. You see, Paul and I have very different expertise. I've been a geography professor for more than 20 years, which of course means that I'm very accustomed to doing all the talking. Paul, on the other hand, has been making, installing, and restoring neon signs for more than 40. We put our heads together, and for over a decade, we've been doing in-depth research for a scholarly book on how neon signs have transformed the American landscape. Along the way, we had a really great experience collaborating with Randall, Ann, and Al on Saving Neon, for which we were able to write the introduction. So we wondered, what about a new book? One that, like Saving Neon, is cheap, but elegantly designed and full of photos. A book that introduces the history, the geography, and the community of neon to people who want to know more about it and want it to be accessible. A quick and refreshing dip rather than a deep, deep dive. So now, working together with Randall, Ann, and Al, this December we will offer Neon, A Light History. It's a glossy little book, about 50 pages long, with about 100 images for just 20 bucks. In it, we write about neon's hidden histories to show how luminous tubing grew from a 19th century American invention to a 20th century inspiration of the future. How neon led through the Great Depression in refashioning American aesthetics and architecture. How, amid post-war exuberance, neon signs leapt from their cans and then crashed into a mid-century nightmare of clutter and noir. Later, to be assaulted by global megacorporations making LEDs. We write about how, when things got really dark for neon, a new generation of sign makers and neon artists have kept neon vibrant into its second century, and how a contemporary enchantment with nostalgia is helping to preserve and restore our rich neon heritage before it's too late. We write about neon's geography to show how neon signs spread from major metropolitan areas to smaller cities and along highways to remote roadside outposts. How neon signs reached out from large sign shops and from mom and pop shops in urban neighborhoods and small towns alike. How neon signs drew people into the country's biggest automakers and its tiniest cafes. We write about how neon signs connect people to place. We write about neon's community to show how neon signs have drawn together skilled craftspeople with business owners and their customers, serving America's diverse communities for over 100 years, drawing together neighbors and passersby who mark life events with neon signs. We introduce businesses that have restored and kept their signs running out of doors and at night for 95 years, and museums and collectors who have saved neon signs by working together with their communities. These, we show, are signs of hope, of togetherness, and of community. And though most of them are today little known, the book reveals them as our American stories. We show how neon signs are important community touchstones. And we wrote this book for all of us who make meaning beneath their light. Thanks. That should leave us with a few minutes to ask, to take questions. I can see the chat stream. Oh, thank you for your nice comments.
Unseen faces on the computer. How are you? If anyone has any questions, I'll do a really quick bio of myself and then questions. So my name is Paul Greenstein. been working in neon since 1977, before many of you were born, probably. I've been restoring signs since about 1979. I did my first sign restoration for the Columbia Drugstore on Sunset and Argyle in 1979. I've been restoring signs ever since. A lot of big ones, a lot of small ones. Most of my work is outdoors. So take it away, questioners.
I have a question. When is it available? We will hope to be in the stores in time for your Christmas shopping.
Okay.
Sounds good.
There's a pre-order link on the Neon Speaks webpage, and we're working on adding it to Mona's book fair website as well.
Here,
What is the weirdest thing you found? Hi, Randall Ann.
There's a great question.
Paul.
Somebody wants to know, who's definitely in the know, are there any more McFarlane Moore lamps in existence?
We did quite an extensive search. We found remnants of his work on site in New Jersey. We found his inventions at the Smithsonian.
Right, he donated what was called a rotator. His earliest signs didn't run on street current, so he invented it's a transformer, but he called it a rotator, and he donated that to the Smithsonian. So that is preserved, but the box that would have contained that and that the tubing went into with the electrodes, none of those have apparently survived.
Yeah, we found bases for some of his lamps in Bamberger's basement in New Jersey, in Newark, New Jersey. But those are
That's close.
But those are pretty much just off-the-shelf things. Those weren't handmade by McFarlane Moore.
Right, so to answer your question, someone asked about the early American invention. So we're talking about Daniel McFarlane Moore, an American inventor who first envisioned luminous tubing in an article he published in 1893, and first in 1894 made his first luminous tubing. He used CO2 and nitrogen air, or CO2, as the gases, and these, unlike neon hadn't been isolated from air yet, or even really named and invented yet. So he didn't use the noble gases, so he had to come up with a lot of workarounds to keep his new luminous tubing going. But his was the first luminous tubing, and at one time around 1905, you could see more installations all over New York and New Jersey.
Not to mention Paris and London and Berlin. Thank you. Yeah.
So what? Someone asked you, Paul, what is the weirdest thing you've ever found inside a neon sign?
It's not that weird. I found a lot of cigarettes, a lot of matches, and a lot of beer bottles. I was working at Union Station in Los Angeles one time, and in order to get to the neon, you had to go through a crawl space, and at the end of the crawl space was a place where you could sit down and work on the sign and dangle your feet down. And I put my feet down, I put my foot on something, reached down, and it was a 1939 Union Station opening day matchbook. And then while I was working on that, I dropped something and I had to reach over, and there was a beer bottle from also probably about 1939. You find some, detritus of other people who've been working on there, which is kind of neat.
When you're not finding dead pigeons.
That's not so weird. That's just unpleasant.
That's the part nobody talks about. We got a question from Chris Rayleigh, who will be presenting during Neon Speaks. And he wants to know what you find to be the biggest challenge in a sign restoration project.
Convincing the customer to do it right?
Well, yeah, they're all different. Sometimes convincing the customer to do it the right way. I'm working on the Earl Carroll Theater in Hollywood right now, and it's been a 6-month battle to get them to do it the right way, even though they profess to do it the right way. Usually the biggest problem with an old sign is that the can is so just abysmally rotten because birds have gotten in there that you have to make a whole new one. I did a sign for a bank, it was a historical society, but it was a bank sign from Kansas, and it was for a TV show, American Restoration. And they sent me pictures, and I gave them a price, and then they sent me the sign, and when I got it, there was no sign left. It was just some porcelain faces. The whole center was rotted out. You could just pick it up and pull it out. So I had to make a whole new sign. And interestingly enough, on that one, I replicated what had been there before and found out that the people who originally built it wrong. So I replicated people's mistakes, but there wasn't enough there to realize that. So usually it's metal.
Restoration.
Yeah.
And do you anticipate any challenges or any specific challenges with Earl Carroll Theater? The fact that it's basically like a skeleton neon sign. There is no tin can, so to speak, right on the exterior of the building. The inside of the building has channels that all the neon plugs into on the ceiling, but there's no ceiling anymore. So I don't know how that's going to play out. The outside is everything is just on tube supports. Yeah. There's channel letters that say Earl Carroll.
What Paul and Al are talking about is the restoration of the Earl Carroll Theater, which is a theater from 1938 in Hollywood. And Paul is working on the restoration of that sign. It's no longer extant, so it's actually a reproduction. We've been doing research for about 6 months to meticulously find out everything about how it was made. It was an incredibly spectacular exterior and interior display when it was new, using the latest, the wildest in neon technology, and nothing like it was ever done again. The Museum of Neon Art will be covering the whole restoration reproduction process on their Instagram once this all gets rolling. So you can look for that on Mona's Instagram. Maybe Corey can, or Ani from Mona can send a link. There we go. Thanks. There's the link to Mona's Instagram. So watch for that. We'll be doing videos with Paul, with Benders, and there'll be inside, an inside documentation about how the whole process is going to take place.
Okay, I think we're just about out of time.
Okay.
Oh, quick question about George Claude housings. Do you ever find any original George Claude? So maybe, I don't know if you're talking about electrodes.
No, the oldest stuff I have ever found would be pre-McMahon tube supports from 26, 27.
So McMahon tube supports are 28.
Those are still around on some old signs, and I've worked on those. But electrodes, oldest electrodes I've found would be from the mid-30s, and those aren't that old. They're not that much different.
Oh,
Todd might have found older ones.
Yeah.
Oh, Todd, you are on mute. You need to unmute if you can.
Todd is on mute.
There you go. Tech support.
We'll be around for the next couple of days doing this. So any questions, just put them in your back pocket.
Yeah, we actually do have a bunch of early electrodes. In fact, some of the electrodes, the homemade ones, they use a nail. And we have a couple of those that we pulled out of old signs that were rotted out. So as far as I know, there weren't George Claude housings. It was just a hole in the end of the tube. The electrode went right through the hole. Housings are a newer thing, but maybe Paul could correct me. But as far as I know, there weren't any such thing as Claude neon housings. That came a little bit later.
What they used to use is they had a thing called a Fonstock clip, which is an electrical clip, and they would clip it to the tail of the neon electrode, and then the housing was usually just like a porcelain collar that was screwed into the sign. Those I do have.
Yeah, we have some of those too.
Yeah, those I find a lot
Also, the Smithsonian Institution has the original signs from 1904 made by the National Bureau of Standards that say NBS, National Bureau of Standards, and helium. And they made their own electrodes, and they look like little round ball flying saucers. They're really, really cool. So those are 1904 electrodes that are preserved at the Smithsonian.
Okay. One last question about materials. I think I've got the right people on the air here. Have you ever seen or used brass tube supports instead of a glass or plastic supports?
Brass tube supports, no. I've seen brass base, of course, those are still made, but I've never seen a brass tube support for the glass.
Okay, I asked because there's a major restoration of all the neon on the Paramount Theater in Oakland,
Mhm.
And I've been told that they actually were using or had found a lot of original brass supports.
Oh.
And I'd never seen that before.
Brass, that would be very peculiar because brass doesn't insulate.
Right.
It must mean the brass
The
base,
base, yeah.
and then the base holds the glass tube support. But and maybe someone can snap a photo.
And then I want, oh, go ahead.
I think it is the base that we're talking about.
Yeah, the base, those are actually still being made. They made brass, they made aluminum, they made steel, they made spring, all kinds of different things.
Okay.
I also wanted to just really quickly address something. Most of my work, this is answering somebody else's question. I usually paint my signs. I very, 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 very rarely leave them patinaed because most of my stuff is outdoors and it has to take the weather. So Tod's, which are museum pieces inside, last forever that way. My stuff, if I were to do that in 6 months, I'd be taking the whole thing down and repairing it again.
All right. Well, Paul and Dydia, thank you so much. That was great. It was really informative. Thanks a lot. And now we're going to bring in our next presenter, the fabulous Kate Widdows. Please welcome Kate. She is a neon aficionado, to say the least. She's a designer and she hails from Portland, Oregon. In fact, Kate designed the Neon Speaks logo that hopefully you're all very familiar with by now. And that's just a short list of Kate's talents. I know you're going to love her presentation. So Kate, let's hit it.
Thanks, Al. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Let me just get this going. Hey, everybody. This is Kate in Portland. Talk about why I think neon is important. So, why neon? This talk is sort of a neon primer with a little science, some history, and I'll show you 3 amazing neon signs from Portland and share a few ideas for saving signs. So just so you know a little bit about me, I live in Portland, Oregon, and I'm a graphic designer and letterer. And for the past 2 years, I've been leading neon tours of Portland 6 times a year. Of course, this year, I'm not doing any tours. I also helped produce the first 2 Neon Speaks festivals. And I co-founded a group here in town called PDXNeon, and I run a project called Electric Letterland, which is also about neon. So, neon has been part of our urban landscape for about 100 years. Here in the Pacific Northwest, in December, the sun sets at 4:30 p.m. So, I dare say that neon is an essential feature of our urban environment. On the most basic physical level, neon signs provide brightness in the dark, and this makes cities safer. But there's a lot of other reasons why neon is important, and I'm about to tell you about them. But first, a little neon science. The science behind how neon signs work is very simple. What we call a neon sign is sometimes filled with neon gas, but there are 4 other gases that are used in these signs: argon, helium, krypton, and xenon. These are called noble gases, which means that they are stable and don't react to being combined with other elements. Neon gas in particular is rare on Earth, but abundant in space. So this nebula, called NGC 6153, has the highest nebular neon abundance known in the universe. Here on Earth, small amounts of neon gases can be found leaking from volcanoes. Lightning is a phenomenon that acts the same way that neon signs do. In fact, one of neon's nicknames is lightning in a bottle. Here, positive and negative charges occur in a cloud, which then connect to an opposite charge on the ground below, excites hydrogen in the air, and gives off photons which emit light. So in a neon sign, we have a vacuum-sealed glass tube, which contains gas. There's a positive charge on one end and a negative charge on the other. The gas's molecules, ions, and electrons are excited by these charges and move at thousands of miles per second towards each end. When they do this, the molecules then collide and blast apart, and photons are emitted. This is what produces the glow. In 1898, neon gas and the other noble gases were discovered by Scottish chemist Sir William Ramsay, who won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for this discovery. In 1902, a French engineer named Georges Claude built upon Ramsay's discovery, as well as the experiments of others, to create the first commercially viable neon sign business. In 1912, Claude sold his first neon sign to a barbershop in Paris. This is where neon had its public debut, and it is one of the reasons Paris is known as the City of Light. Georges Claude expanded his business to the US soon after, and once World War I was over, the neon trade spread across America very quickly. It became the newest, brightest way to advertise on a streetscape. You can see a neon sign from miles away, and it was a beautiful sight. After World War II, American soldiers returning home could use the GI Bill to enroll in neon trade school and learn how to bend glass and fabricate signs. And many of them sure did. Business was booming. And soon neon was everywhere, and it was awesome. This was neon's peak about 1940 to 1960. But it went too far. Streets became so cluttered with neon signs that by the 60s, a general distaste grew against neon, and it became associated with smut and dilapidation. Then in 1965, Lady Bird Johnson's Highway Beautification Act passed, and cities across the nation launched Scrap Old Signs initiatives. Tens and thousands of neon signs were destroyed. At the same time, plastic was on the rise, which was much cheaper than neon, and so neon's popularity for signage use declined. However, in the 1980s, neon art became popular. This is a Bruce Nauman piece from 1985. And today there are museums all over the world dedicated to neon signs. There are a lot of elements that go into the creation of a neon sign, but at the heart of it is tube bending or glass bending. The tube bender takes a length of straight glass tubing and uses flame to soften the glass, adding a puff of air to prevent the glass from collapsing on itself. Benders work atop paper patterns, matching the lines of the design as they bend. Neon signs are essentially made the same way today as they were in the 1920s. Neon sign making is a highly specialized, highly skilled craft that takes many years to master. There are families of neon benders that have passed the trade down through generations. This is Blanchett Neon in Edmonton, which is still operated today by third generation of Blanchett descendants. Neon signs are actually a very green technology. So all parts of the sign, the glass, electrodes, transformers, wiring, and sheet metal are reusable and recyclable and relatively non-toxic. At the time neon signs were introduced, they were exponentially more efficient than incandescent bulbs and were marketed as a money saver. But today, LEDs have surpassed neon signs in efficiency. However, LEDs are not a green technology, nor do they have the longevity or the simplicity or the beauty of neon. Portland is lucky to have a good quantity of vintage signs still in use all over town. I'm going to talk about 3 historic and beautiful signs here. The Portland Outdoor Store opened in 1914. Their gorgeous neon sign was built in 1947. The lettering here is a classic 1940s style, and one common feature of Portland vertical signs is that the stacked word outdoor is tapered from top to bottom. See how the O on top is larger than the R at the bottom. This sign reminds me that Portland is part of the West, part of a Western Americana culture and connected to nature and animals and the landscape. Another unique thing about this sign is its horse and rider. There are so many beautiful details here and many different colored tubes, red, pink, blue, white, and yellow. This store is still going strong, and I hope the sign can remain at this location for a long time. The Alibi is Portland's original tiki bar, opened in 1947, and is one of the oldest tiki bars in the country. This photo is from 1963, and this is an older sign that was replaced with this sign, which was built in 1963. The bulbs used to be all white, but during a recent restoration, the bottom half of the bulbs were changed to red. Here it is in all its tiki glory. These angular letters are so unique. I can't think of any other signs in town with this style of lettering. And I love the nefarious associations with the word alibi. It's just such a fun, mysterious sign to me, and it's so unusual to see on the street today. Here it is in action. The Laurelhurst Theater opened in 1923. Again, here we have the tapered lettering on the vertical signs. See the big L on top and the small T on the bottom? This facade is just magic. The luscious L is one of my favorite features. And also this sort of plume of peacock feathers with multicolored tubes emanating like the sun's rays. It's just such a unique and breathtaking design. And I actually think this is one of the best neon signs in the world. So now you love neon, right? Here are a few things you can do to encourage the preservation of these signs. Support the small businesses that keep these beauties lit. And tell the clerk or shop owner that they have a beautiful sign. If you see a sign or a building with a sign coming down, find out what's happening to it. You can call the owners of the business or even talk to the demolition crew on site. Contact local sign shops in your area and suggest that they take the sign into their possession. And while you're at it, support the neon vendors. Help keep the trade going by ordering a custom sign for your living room or your office. Yes, but why? Why neon? What is it that makes us love cities? Cities are anchored in history. They present evidence of their own unique history. An old sign is a glowing signal from the past, and an essential ingredient of a vibrant, interesting place. Neon signs are all made by hand, and you can see the hand-shaped imperfections in each design. Today, we live in a sea of mass-manufactured, mostly corporate, plastic signs that are boring, ugly, and soulless. So neon stands out for its handmade beauty and its magical glow. Neon connects us to the past, to independent businesses, and to outer fucking space. And neon is just beautiful, period. I don't think it's too much to ask to be surrounded by beauty. The end. Thank you. Also, by the way, I'm doing a talk on neon scripts this Sunday morning if you're interested. So maybe I'll see you then.
All right. Thank you, Kate. That was wonderful. And it's great to see all my favorite signs up there in Portland, and I hope they're all still intact as we speak today.
They are.
Good. Like you just said, you will be presenting again during Neon Speaks. So I wanted to ask people, if you have any questions for Kate, please put them in the chat, and Kate can check on the chat. And you've got a few days to think about questions you might have for her, because she will be making a return engagement. So
On Sunday.
on Sunday. So we look forward to that very much, actually. So Kate, thank you very much. And
Wait, there's a question in the chat. Should I answer it?
Oh yeah, if you can find it.
Well, somebody is asking, is that famous Portland sign with the deer neon? And yes, it is. That's the called the White Stag sign, and it's been redone about 5 times since about I'm not going to remember the year it was built. I think in the late 30s. But it's still all neon, and yeah, people here call it the Portland, Oregon sign because that's what it says on it now. Yeah, So that is like the most famous neon sign in town, and it's actually owned by the city. So it's like totally protected forever.
And Kate, one other question just about the tapering letter forms on the Portland signs. Do you want to give that a quick, we've got to keep going, but you have a quick answer for that?
Oh, what's the question exactly?
Yeah, why do they do that? Why do they taper?
And that's such a popular style in Portland.
Well, I mean, I've seen some other like smaller examples of that in other places where it sort of draws your eye down and into the establishment. I'm just guessing it was a fad, and some sign company here like just got really into it and did it all over the place because
it was their style.
There's also there's another theater here in town called the Moreland that also has that same tapering, and also the Oregon Leather Company, and probably a few more. It's just surprising.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Kate. I enjoyed that immensely, and I'm sure everybody in the audience did as well.
Thank you.
All right. I would like to introduce our next and last speaker for this afternoon session. So let me introduce you to Lippy, who's going to give us something entirely different. And welcome, Lippy. He is a wonderful animator with a successful and storied career in commercial animation world. Some of Lippy's clients have included Google, Disney, the John Lennon Estate, and Apple. Now, for Apple, he designed the signature character for their first gaming computer. And by the way, you could not meet a nicer fellow. So, Lippy, it's all yours now.
Well, I'm going to try to live up to that intro, Al. I want to thank you and Randall for hosting me and having me, and welcome to all of us neon freaks. So yes, I'm Lippy, an independent animator, has been working in the Bay Area for about the last 25 years. And today I'm going to walk you through my latest animated short, which tells the history and the technology behind what makes neon glow, and I'll be demonstrating some of the virtual reality technology that this particular cartoon is presenting. I'm going to talk a lot about actually what Kate just talked about, but it'll be really fun because I'm going to kind of show an animated version of the same thing. So, you know, I've worked in television and feature films and many other different aspects of the entertainment business over the years, but by far, virtual reality is the biggest challenge to presenting a narrative that I've ever seen. And as we go through my talk today, I'll be showing you why that is, hopefully. So what I'm going to show is, let me share my screen here. Sorry, just a minute, please. Do it. Okay, everybody seeing that? Hello?
Yes, I can see it.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to show this VR short that I just finished not too long ago. And I'm also going to show a very short video presentation of some tube bending. And then I'm going to show a little bit of some support material, some making of. And I encourage you, I just posted in the chat where this video link, my cartoon lives on YouTube. And even if you don't have a virtual reality headset, you can watch it and you'll see that I'm going to demonstrate a technique of pushing the video around. And that'll become obvious when I start to do it. So I'm going to be stopping and starting the video a little bit and talking about some of the techniques of how I made it. And I encourage you to go and see this on your own computer or your phone. And as I say, the link is in the chat, and the link is also in my bio on the Neon Speaks page. So having said all of that, now I should be back. Full screen, just me. Okay, so I started thinking about neon, and I've been a neon freak for many years. And one of the things that a couple of our speakers and panelists have just talked about in this hour is the fact that neon is handmade. And when I kind of learned that for the first time, not that many years ago, when I started to really delve into neon. That was the impetus, the spark that got me excited about the story of neon, the history of neon, and the technology of neon. So I talked to my producers who are great animation producers, the TED Ed people, who are the educational adjunct of the TED Talks people. And I proposed this idea, let's do something about neon and let's do it in virtual reality. And they said, well, Lip, like, we don't know anything about virtual reality. So, you know, if you can figure out the tech, we'll present it. And I said, great. So I immediately did what I always do. I ran to the library into the children's section. And I find that like the children's section of, we have a great library here up in Marin in Mill Valley. And it's wonderful. I use it for every educational piece that I do, because I find that a lot of these great books for teens and even younger kids, they'll take something like neon, the idea of electrifying neon and why does it glow? What's the chemistry behind it? And they really winnow it down. So they do kind of all the heavy lifting for me. So I did that. I got involved with a wonderful San Francisco local community of Al and Randall. And they subsequently got me in touch with Dydia. And I learned a lot of great history. And they also introduced me to Shauna Peterson, who is an actual tube bender, actual, like she's real life. They still make them, folks. And she's bending out in the East Bay. And I was lucky enough to go to her workshop. She let me film the whole process so that I could just kind of get it into me and understand it and kind of roll it around in my head so that I could then kind of synthesize it out into something demonstrative in an animated cartoon. So that's the story of basically my inspiration for this. Very briefly, let me just tell you, the way that you generally make an animated cartoon is that you record all of the narration first. So I wrote the script, we had it narrated, and then you match the visuals to the audio. You do that because making animation is incredibly time-consuming, tedious, and expensive. And so you're trying to work out all of the guts. You're trying to figure out all the mistakes before you actually put any money into it. So it's very easy to throw away paper and pencil stuff. And so I did a lot of these, they call these storyboards. So I'm assigning visuals to the narration. And when that all gets approved, boom, the next step is actually making the piece. So let's watch it, shall we? A couple things I'll explain is that, yes, I'm going to be kind of stopping, pausing the video at certain points. Let me just give you a very, very, quick, gentle introduction. Is what virtual reality means in this context is the visuals are wrapping around your head in 360 degrees. When you put on a virtual reality headset, you are able to turn around and you will see my hand-drawn animation all around you. And in addition to that, we also have spatial audio, which it means we've made a sphere of audio that wraps around your head in the same way, so that if like a door opens up and behind you, it's pinpointed in that sphere, and you can feel that it's behind you. It's not in this ear or this ear, it's in all ears. It's really cool. So so I'm going to be stopping and I'm going to be turning the video at different points. And again, I encourage you to watch this on your own time when you can get the flow of it, because it's an entertainment piece, and you should really kind of let it flow over you. But hey, this is the director's cut. So, be patient with me. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. Oh, okay. And here we go. This is what makes neon signs glow.
When the Hoover Dam was completed in 1936, it created a huge source of hydroelectric power and zapped a sleepy desert town to life, Las Vegas, Nevada. With the power supply from the dam, Las Vegas soon exploded with vibrant displays. The source.
So stopping here just to show you, as you're watching this, you're able to turn your head in space and you're seeing all of these great signs. Now, these are all created via computer graphics. These are not photographs. Even that La Concha sign, which it's unbelievable. These were created by my partners in crime, production studio here in Marin in San Rafael called Idle Hands. And they recreated all of these killer Vegas signs.
The source of these dazzling lights was electrified neon gas. There are two tricky obstacles to making lighted signs out of this naturally clear, odorless gas: capturing it and making it glow. French inventor Georges Claude came up with techniques.
So this is the history of the Paris section. So here I'm simulating, like if you were watching this in a headset, you would certainly be looking all around, because that's a human nature thing to do. Oh, where are we now? So I'm just kind of giving you the lay of the land here. One more thing I want to talk about is this was created with stereoscopic depth, which is very much like a ViewMaster, like we used to have in the 60s and 70s, or I don't know, they still make ViewMasters. So this animation actually has the depth of a ViewMaster. So when you're looking at this steeple, it is very much in the front foreground. And this row of buildings is now in the midground. And then the cityscape of Paris beyond is very much in the background. And it really comes alive when you watch it in a headset. It's very cool. And so this is Georges Claude's workshop.
To do both. In 1902, he developed a way of liquefying and separating specific gases from the air, producing neon on an industrial scale for the first time. By 1910, he had come up with a way to trap the gas in a glass tube with a special electrode at either end, and neon lighting was born.
I'm going to stop it there because you heard that ping, that little audio hit. That's because, as an animation director, another thing about virtual reality that's very challenging is, as I'm showing you, you can look anywhere in 360 degrees. So if you're in this workshop, a turn of the century Parisian workshop, I don't know as a director where you're going to be looking at any time. And I really want you to see what I'm about to show you in that circle, that detailed circle. So I will give you an audio hit, a ping that will always stay at a certain spot in the sphere, in the audio sphere. And then it's up to you to turn around and find it. And then that will show you that that's where you should be looking. Now, all these guys are creating a piece of the kind of the production puzzle of how you create neon. So we'll go around here.
Workshops like Claude's, artisans known as tube benders made neon signs by hand. The tube benders heated small sections of a long, hollow glass tube and quickly bent them into shape. After the glass cooled, they attached electrodes to each end and removed the air with a vacuum pump. Then they passed a high-voltage current through the tube to remove any impurities on the inside of the glass. Finally, they pumped the neon gas in and sealed off the electrodes. When a neon sign is turned on, the electric current causes some of the neon atoms' electrons to accelerate and break free of their orbits, leaving behind positively charged ions. As these free electrons rush from one electrode to the other, they collide with more neon atoms, causing them to ionize as well. When these excited electrons fall back to their normal energy levels, their excess energy is carried away by photons, or particles of light. All this happens in an instant, and the glow from the photons is what we see when we switch on a neon sign. Though it's common to call any gas-filled sign a neon sign, there are actually 5 different gases used in production. Each gas emits photons of a different wavelength when electrified, which correspond to different colors of light. Neon gives off an orange-red glow. Argon glows a pale lavender, helium a dusty pink, krypton a silver white, and xenon a light purple. These 5 gases can be combined with color-coded tubing to create an electrified rainbow of text and images.
So I'm going to stop here. This is the final section, and this is a cityscape in the 1930s. Just wanted you to see it. It actually changes throughout the section a little bit as time goes by. This is what you'd see if you turned around and watch this shop in particular. We call this section the Shoe Wars section. And there is a little bit of a cartoon action that goes on between that shoe store and this shoe store. So I'll be begging your seasickness genes, and I hope that you don't get too dizzy when I go back and forth, just like you would do as the story progresses. You'll see the rivalry between these two guys. This was my big kind of meat and potatoes section about the social history of neon and what tickled me about it in the very beginning.
Business owners soon realized how effective these colorful beacons were for attracting customers. And unlike a light bulb, a neon sign has no incandescent filaments to burn out and can shine continuously for 40 years before the gas depletes. By the 1930s, neon signs were lighting up storefronts all over the world. Because of the glass tube's fragile nature, it usually wasn't feasible to ship them over long distances. Instead, most neon signs were created by local neon shops and then installed nearby. Signs with humor, personality, and intricate designs proliferated. No two exactly alike. But by the end of World War II, plastics had become widely available and inexpensive, and plastic signs supplanted neon as messengers of modernity. Many towns removed neon signs they viewed as old-fashioned. Today, neon sign production is only a fraction of what it was at its peak. But the craft of tube bending lives on relatively unchanged. New creations handcrafted by local artisans join survivors from the heyday of neon, hiding in plain sight in city streets around the world.
Okay. Start my share. So that's the piece. And I loved it. I mean, not that I'm so great, but I mean, I loved having the excuse to go in and learn about something that was so exciting to me.
Well, thank you, Lippy. That was fascinating to see, particularly for me the second time around. I enjoyed it even more. I have a question for you before we wrap it up for the afternoon.
Yeah.
What was it that attracted you to neon in the first place?
I guess, you know, there's a nostalgic aspect to it. I was born in 1959, so I grew up in like the end of the neon heyday, and I saw all of this stuff change over, especially in the 70s. I grew up in kind of a small Pennsylvania town, and even as a kid, as a young teenager, I felt the loss, like, of something beautiful. And so I just had this this kind of innate, I was attracted to the beautiful, pretty light, and it stuck with me. And then one of the things that when I was courting my wife, we found out really quickly that we both were neon freaks. We both had the Let There Be Neon book in our little bookshelves, and boom, you know, next thing we know, we're taking a walk with Randall in San Francisco.
And you're still interested. That's really great.
And we're still interested in each other too.
Yeah, excellent. You know, I'm curious, how many hours would you estimate that you put into creating a piece like this, an animation like this?
Jesus, that's a really good question. I wish I had a quick answer. I'll say, rather than just throwing a number out, I mean, it was months and months. Normally, a piece like that, a 4-minute animated piece. Now that budgetary constraints required that, you know, the animation was very stilted. It wasn't like Disney and things like that. We took a lot of shortcuts. Generally, it would take one person working full time, something like 4 months to make a 4-minute animated piece like that. When you put it in VR, it basically takes about 4 times as long. So you're talking like 14 months, something like that. And I had help. And it's still, you know, because the last thing I'll say about it is there is no turnkey animation program. I basically created that out of spit and bubblegum with all these kind of disparate technologies. And at one point when I was creating the visuals, I did not have any way to check them with a headset. So I was like going blind. I got about a third of the way through it before I got a headset that worked. So anyway, you know, but that's fun. That's like the pioneering part of new technology. You just run with it, just like neon was at the turn of the last century.
Sure. And one last question, and this is a question from Craig Winslow. He would like to know where he can see this in VR.
Yes, luckily for you, Craig, you can see it on YouTube. The link is in the chat. You might have to scroll up. The link is also on my bio blurb in the Neon Speaks website. What that will do is it will take you to a YouTube address, which is why it's so wonderful. You don't need any special kind of software or anything. You need a VR headset. I will also say you can watch it on your phone as well. If you navigate to that YouTube spot through your phone, it's a little bit different. You're certainly not putting a headset on, but the way the phone interprets VR is very interesting. It's almost like you are stuck in the middle of this dome of vision, and the phone is like a little cutout window that is showing you wherever you're pointing it. So that's the best I can do. If you have a headset, just navigate to YouTube. If you got your phone, even navigate to YouTube. It'll be a different fun experience.
All right. Well, Libby, thank you so much. Thanks for being part of
My pleasure.
The opening session of Neon Speaks. And by the way, that concludes our first session. We're going to roll some coming attractions for what we have coming up. And tonight, we're going to close the webinar soon, but tonight, please come back at 5 o'clock for a virtual neon tour of the Tender Knob area, and Knob Hill, and some of the Tenderloin. And then and that's at 5 p.m. Pacific time, California time, San Francisco time. And then at 6:30, we'll be having a very interesting, I guarantee you, panel discussion with some people who are involved in neon history, neon preservation from different parts of the country. And I'm sure that it's going to be a pretty lively presentation. So please come back for that tonight. And with that, we'll sign off for now. And here's some of the coming attractions. And I believe we're going to be able to get those up and running here.
But what else? To tell people to go get the printable schedule.
Oh, okay. And you can download a printable schedule from our website, Neon Speaks. And I would recommend that you also go to the bio page on the Neon Speaks website. And if you scroll over the photographs of our presenters, now I've got a reverb. But if you do that,
and unlike a light bulb, a neon sign has no incandescent filaments to burn out and can shine continuously for 40 years before the gap.
And we'll see you at 5 p.m. this afternoon, California time. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later.
Okay, wait, I'm not there yet.